Hyun stood in the center of the massive chamber, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his life. The room was huge, bigger than any stadium on Earth. All around him, floating in the air on platforms of light, sat representatives from 847 different alien species. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of crystal or gas or things Hyun could not even name. They all stared down at him with eyes that held no warmth. The chamber orbited a dead star called Velthuran. Through the transparent walls, Hyun could see the corpse of the sun, dark and cold. It felt like a bad sign. Ambassador Hyun of Earth. A voice boomed through the chamber. It came from everywhere at once. We have completed our review of your species. The Galactic Council will now deliver its decision. Hyun's heart pounded. He had spent 3 months traveling to this place. 3 months away. From his wife, his children, his home. 3 months preparing the case for why humanity deserved to join the galactic community. He had practiced his speeches 1,000 times. He had memorized every fact, every achievement, every reason why Earth should be welcomed among the stars. A creature that looked like a massive bird made of metal floated forward. This was Talmora, the hierarch of the Vrecken species. She was ancient, older than human civilization itself. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind through a graveyard. We have watched your world for 200 years, Talmora said. Since your first radio signals reached beyond your atmosphere, we have observed everything. Your wars, your art, your science, your cruelty, and your kindness. We have studied your biology, your psychology, your history, and we have concluded something that pains us to say. Hyun felt his stomach drop. Humanity is too dangerous to join galactic civilization, Talmora continued. Your species evolved on what we classify as a death world. Your planet's gravity would crush most species. Your diseases would kill them in hours. Your predators would hunt them for sport. And yet you not only survived this hell, you thrived in it. You conquered it. Another alien floated forward. This one looked almost like a human, but its skin was blue, and its eyes were completely black. This was Vexerin, Chancellor of the Eltherian Combine. His voice was cold and calculating. Your species are persistence hunters, Vexerin said. Do you understand how rare that is? How terrifying. Most intelligent species in the galaxy evolved as prey animals, or as opportunistic scavengers. You evolved as predators who could chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. You hunted animals to death by simply refusing to stop. What kind of madness is that? Hyun wanted to argue, but the Chancellor kept talking. And then, somehow, you took wolves, one of your planet's apex predators, and you domesticated them. You turned killers into companions. You made them love you. The psychological profile required for that is deeply disturbing to most council species. Talmora spread her metallic wings. Your history is filled with violence. You have fought more wars than most species fight in 10,000 years. You created weapons capable of destroying your entire planet. And you came within moments of using them, multiple times. Even now, with the promise of joining us among the stars, you cannot fully unite your own world. Hyun finally found his voice. But we're trying, he said. His words sounded tiny in the massive chamber. Yes, we have fought. Yes, we have made terrible mistakes, but we have also created beauty. We have art, and music, and literature. We have compassion. We risk our lives to save strangers. We die for ideas. We dream of better worlds. Doesn't that count for something? Vexerin tilted his head. It counts for everything, Ambassador. That is precisely why you are so dangerous. A species that is merely violent can be contained. A species that is merely intelligent can be monitored. But a species that combines violence, intelligence, creativity, and dreams? A species that can weaponize hope itself? That is unprecedented. That is terrifying. The chamber filled with the sounds of alien agreement. Clicks, whistles, roars, and sounds Hyun had no names for. He looked around desperately, searching for any friendly face. He found 16 species out of 847 who looked at him with something other than fear or disgust. The Galactic Council votes, Talmora announced. All in favor of admitting humanity to galactic civilization, indicate now. 16 lights appeared in the chamber. 16 votes out of 847. The motion fails, Talmora said. By council law, and for the safety of all civilized species, we hereby place Earth under indefinite quarantine. A barrier will be constructed around your solar system within 30 standard days. No ships will enter. No ships will leave. No communication will pass through. No peace. Earth will be isolated until such time as humanity evolves beyond its dangerous nature, or until it destroys itself. Either outcome will solve the problem. Hyun felt like someone had punched him in the chest. You can't do this, he whispered. Then louder. You can't do this. We're not monsters. We're just different from you. Please, give us a chance to prove ourselves. But the council was already moving on to other business. Hyun was escorted from the chamber by guards who looked like walking trees. They were polite, but firm. His ship was allowed to return to Earth. The council gave him that much mercy. He would be able to deliver the news in person. The journey home took 3 months. Hyun spent every day of it staring at the stars, wondering if he had failed his entire species. What could he have said differently? What could he have done? The questions ate at him like acid. When he finally reached Earth, the entire world was waiting for his news. The broadcast went to every nation, every city, every village. Hyun stood before cameras and told 8 billion people that they had been judged and found wanting. That in 30 days, a wall would go up around their sun, and they would be alone in the universe. Some people cried. Some people rioted. Some people prayed. But most people just felt numb. On the 30th day, the barrier activated. It appeared as a shimmering wall of light at the edge of the solar system, far beyond Pluto. Astronomers watched through their telescopes as it formed, a perfect sphere of energy surrounding everything humanity had ever known. Ships that approached it bounced off like tennis balls. Radio signals vanished into it like whispers in a storm. Quantum communications, which were supposed to work across any distance, simply died. Earth was alone. In the council chambers, Talmora and Vexrin watched the barrier activate. They reviewed the human file one last time, then marked it as closed. Do you think they will survive? Asked a junior counselor. It does not matter, Vexrin replied. They are contained. The galaxy is safe. In a few centuries, we will check on them. Either they will be dead, or they will have become peaceful. Either way, the threat is neutralized. Talmora nodded her metallic head. The council has done its duty. Let us move on to more important matters. 2. They had no idea what they had just done. None of them understood that they had not locked humanity away from the galaxy. They had locked the galaxy away from humanity. And in doing so, they had given Earth the one thing it needed most: time to evolve without interference, without rules, without anyone telling them what was possible and what was not. The council thought they had prevented a catastrophe. Instead, they had created one. And the countdown had already begun. Part 2. 5 years had passed since the barrier went up, and Earth had not collapsed. Everyone expected riots, chaos, maybe even the end of civilization. Instead, something strange happened. People got to work. Dr. Junho sat in his laboratory deep beneath the mountains of South Korea, staring at screens filled with numbers and graphs. He was a quantum physicist, which meant he studied the tiniest particles in the universe and how they behaved. For 5 years, he had studied nothing but the barrier. Every day. Every night. He barely slept, he barely ate. His wife brought him food and told him to rest, but he could not stop. The barrier was the most fascinating thing he had ever seen. It's beautiful, he whispered to himself, watching the data flow across his screens. Terrifying, but beautiful. His assistant, a young engineer named Taeyang, looked up from his own computer. Found something new, Doctor? Junho nodded slowly. The barrier is not just a wall. It's more like a membrane. It lets certain things through, very tiny things, at the quantum level, and when those particles pass through, they leave traces. Patterns. Taeyang walked over to look at the screen. What kind of patterns? Energy patterns, Junho said, his voice getting excited. The barrier is not blocking energy. It's transforming it. Every photon, every particle that hits it gets converted into something else and redistributed across the barrier's surface. Do you know what that means? Taeyang's eyes went wide. It means the barrier is a power source. Exactly, Junho grinned. It was the first time he had smiled in months. A massive, infinite power source. The Council trapped us in here, but they also gave us unlimited energy. They just do not know it yet. Also, across the world, other scientists were making their own discoveries. In a secret facility in Iceland, Dr. Minji led a team of 50 engineers who were building something impossible. They called it a quantum tap. It was a machine designed to pull energy directly from the barrier, without breaking it. The first prototype barely produced enough power to light a single bulb. The second version powered a city block. By the end of the year, they had versions that could power entire countries. The world's energy crisis vanished overnight. No more oil, no more coal, no more fighting over resources. The barrier that was meant to prison them became the solution to one of humanity's oldest problems. With unlimited power, humanity started building. Commander Jiho stood on the surface of Mars, looking up at Earth in the distance. It was just a blue dot from here, but it was home. Around him, robots and workers were constructing the first permanent colony on Mars. Giant domes rose from the red dirt. Gardens were planted in artificial soil. Water was extracted from the ice buried beneath the surface. "How many people can we fit here?" asked one of the engineers. A woman named Yuna, who specialized in biology. "In these domes, maybe 10,000, Jiho replied. "But we are not stopping with domes. Give us 10 years, and we will have cities, real cities, with trees and rivers and everything." Yuna smiled. The Council wanted to trap us on Earth. Instead, we are spreading throughout our entire solar system. I wonder how they would feel about that. They would probably be terrified, Jiho said with a laugh. Good, but not everyone was happy. There were people who thought humanity should try to make peace with the Council. There were others who thought they should prepare for war, and there were many who simply wanted to live their lives and forget about the galaxy beyond the barrier. A philosopher named Do Yun wrote a book during those years. He called it The Quarantine Manifesto. In it, he argued that the barrier was not a punishment, but a gift. Humanity had spent its entire history divided by borders, by nations, by tribes. They fought over land and resources and ideas. But now, with the entire galaxy united against them, humanity had no choice but to unite as well. "We are all humans now," Do Yun wrote. "Not Americans or Chinese or Europeans or Africans. Just humans. And that is what we needed all along. A common enemy. A shared struggle. The Council meant to destroy us, but instead, they gave us purpose." The book became the most read text on Earth. People quoted it in speeches. Children studied it in schools. It captured something that everyone felt, but could not put into words. The barrier was not the end. It was the beginning. 20 years after the quarantine began, a young astrophysicist named Nari made a discovery that would change everything. She was studying the quantum signature of the barrier, trying to understand how it worked. She had spent months collecting data, running simulations, checking her math over and over. And then, late one night, she saw something that should not exist. The barrier was not alone. It was connected to other barriers. 47 other barriers, scattered across the galaxy. Each one had the same quantum signature, the same energy pattern. They were all part of a network. Nari ran to her supervisor, nearly tripping over chairs in her excitement. "Professor! Professor! Look at this!" The professor was an old woman who had been studying the barrier since day one. She looked at Nari's data with tired eyes. Then those eyes went wide. "This is impossible," she whispered. "I checked it 50 times, Nari said. "It is real. There are other species in quarantine. Lots of them. And all their barriers are connected. If they are connected," the professor said slowly, "then we might be able to communicate through them." They spent the next 6 months building equipment that could send signals through the quantum network. It was dangerous work. If they got it wrong, they could damage their own barrier, maybe even bring it down. But if they got it right, they would not be alone anymore. Finally, they sent the first message. It was simple. "Hello, is anyone there?" For 3 days, there was no response. Nari began to think she had been wrong. Maybe the connections were natural, not artificial. Maybe there was nobody on the other side. Then, on the 4th day, a reply came back. The language was strange. The symbols were different, but computers could translate it. The message said, "We are here. We have been here for 800 years. You are the first species to ever contact us. Who are you?" Nari's hands shook as she typed a response. "We are humans. We are from Earth. The Council quarantined us 20 years ago. They said we were too dangerous." The response came faster this time. "They told us the same thing. They said we were too empathetic, that we cared too much about other species, that we would disrupt their order. They have been lying to the galaxy for thousands of years. Welcome to the prison, humans. We are glad you are here." The species called themselves the Vrin. They were gentle creatures who had tried to help other species in trouble. The Council decided that such interference was dangerous and locked them away. Over the next few months, Nari's team made contact with all 47 quarantined species. Each one had a different story, but they all had the same ending. The Council feared them, so the Council imprisoned them. One of the Vrin elders sent a long message to Earth. It was addressed to anyone who would listen. The message said, "The Council did not quarantine you to protect the galaxy from you. They did it to protect themselves. They are afraid of change. They are afraid of anyone who might threaten their power. Every species in quarantine was put here because they were too good at something, too creative, too advanced, too kind, too curious. The Council calls it safety. We call it control." When Junho read that message, something clicked in his mind. He called a meeting with every major scientist, every military leader, every politician on Earth. The meeting lasted for 3 days. At the end of it, they had a plan. It was dangerous. It was maybe impossible. But it was also humanity's only chance at freedom. They were going to break out. Not just Earth, all 48 quarantined species. At the same time, the project was given a name: Operation Exodus. And if it worked, the galaxy would never be the same again. Part 3. The Awakening. The underground facility in Geneva looked like something from a science fiction movie. Screens covered every wall, showing data from 48 different star systems. Scientists from a dozen countries worked at stations, talking to aliens through quantum connections that should not exist. In the center of it all stood Dr. Junho, now much older, but still sharp as a knife. "Report," he said to the room. A young officer named Hana spoke first. "We have confirmed stable connections with all 47 other quarantined species. The Vrin are ready. The Korath, are ready. The Sylvani have completed their part of the calculations. Everyone is waiting for us to give the word. Junho nodded. And the timeline? 3 years, said Taeyang, who had become Junho's right-hand man over the decades. We need 3 years to coordinate everything. The barriers have to fall at exactly the same moment, down to the microsecond. If even one species is off by a second, the whole plan fails. Then we have work to do, Junho said. But not everyone agreed with the plan. In government buildings around the world, arguments broke out. Some leaders thought breaking the quarantine was suicide. Others thought it was their only hope. The debates went on for months. Director Jaewon of Earth Security was one of the loudest critics. He stood before the United Earth Council and shouted his concerns. Do you know what the Council will do? They will see it as an act of war. They have 847 species. We have 48. The math is simple. They will crush us. A diplomat named Hana tried to calm him. We are not preparing for war. We are preparing for negotiation. Once the barriers fall, we will send a message of peace. We will show them that we are not threats. We are victims of their fear. And if they do not listen, Jaewon demanded, then we show them that imprisoning us was their biggest mistake, said General Sora. She was the commander of Earth's defense force, a woman who had spent 30 years preparing for a fight she hoped would never come. We have spent 50 years isolated, building technology they have never seen. We have 48 species working together, while they have spent those same years arguing among themselves. If they want war, we will give them a war. But they will lose. The debate went to a vote. Not just among politicians, but among everyone. Every human on Earth and in the colonies got to vote on whether Operation Exodus should go forward. It was the biggest election in human history. The results came in after 2 weeks. 67% voted yes. Humanity would break free, no matter the cost. Preparations began in earnest. Human engineers worked with the Korath, a species of master builders who had been quarantined for being too good at making things. Together, they designed ships powered by barrier energy, ships that could move in ways council vessels could not match. The ships did not fight against physics. They danced with it. The Sylvani were artificial intelligences, machines that had gained consciousness and been imprisoned for it. They helped humanity create navigation systems and communication networks that could handle the chaos of 48 species acting as one. The Vrin, with their natural empathy, became mediators. When disputes arose between the quarantined species, the Vrin helped solve them. They taught humanity how to think like a community instead of competitors. General Sora trained the first combined military force. Humans, Korath, Vrin, Sylvani, and dozens of other species learned to work together. They practiced maneuvers in simulation, learning each other's strengths and weaknesses. It was messy at first. Species that evolved in water had trouble understanding species that evolved in fire, but slowly, they became something new. Not 48 different militaries. One unified force. We are making history, Sora told her officers one day. The council kept us apart because together, we would be unstoppable. Let us prove them right. 1. But there was still one thing left to do before the barriers fell. Ambassador Hyun, now over 90 years old, recorded a message. He was ancient and tired, but his voice was still strong. This message would be broadcast to the entire galaxy the moment the barriers came down. It needed to be perfect. Hyun sat in front of a camera and spoke from his heart. To the Galactic Council and all species of the known galaxy. My name is Hyun. I am a human from Earth. 50 years ago, I stood before you and asked to be accepted as equals. You rejected us. You called us dangerous. You locked us away like criminals. For 50 years, we have been alone. Cut off from the galaxy. Cut off from knowledge. Cut off from the community we desperately wanted to join. You thought this would make us weaker. You thought we would destroy ourselves or become peaceful enough to control. You were wrong. Isolation did not break us. It made us stronger. We learned to work together in ways we never had before. We built technology you said was impossible. We united 48 different species who you had also imprisoned. We did all of this, not to threaten you, but to survive. In a few moments, our barriers will fall. All of them. At the same time. We are not doing this out of anger or revenge. We are doing it because imprisonment is wrong. No matter the reason. We are doing it because fear is a terrible foundation for civilization. We offer you a choice. You can see this as an attack and respond with violence. If you do, you will find that we are ready. We have had 50 years to prepare, and we will defend ourselves. Or you can see this as an opportunity. An opportunity to build something better. A galactic community based on cooperation instead of fear. On diversity instead of conformity. On hope instead of control. The choice is yours. But know this. We are done being prisoners. We are done being afraid. We are coming out, and nothing you do can stop us. We hope you choose peace. But we are ready for either path. The message was perfect. It was strong but not threatening. Hopeful but not naive. When the council finally heard it, they would have to make a choice. And that choice would determine the fate of the galaxy. 3 years passed faster than anyone expected. The day of Operation Exodus arrived. In every quarantine system, ships powered up. Humans, Vryn, Korath, Sylvani, and 44 other species prepared for the moment that would define their futures. Dr. Junho stood in the command center in Geneva, watching the countdown on the screen. Around him, hundreds of people held their breath. This was it. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment. 10 seconds, someone called out. Junho thought about his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren. He thought about Earth, beautiful and blue, waiting behind its barrier. He thought about all the species who had suffered for centuries, alone in their prisons. 5 seconds. He thought about Hyun, standing before the council all those years ago, trying to save humanity with words alone. Now they would save themselves with action. 3, 2, 1. Junho pressed the button. Across the galaxy, in 48 different star systems, barriers that had stood for decades or centuries began to fluctuate. The quantum network that connected them, the same network that had allowed them to communicate, became their weakness. Energy surged through the connections. The barriers did not break. They inverted. 50 years of accumulated energy burst outward in massive waves. Not destructive waves. Controlled ones. The energy dispersed harmlessly into space, lighting up the darkness like 48 new stars being born. In the council chambers, alarms screamed. Emergency lights flashed. Every screen showed the same impossible thing. All the quarantine barriers failing at exactly the same moment. "This is impossible," someone shouted. But it was happening. And then, from all 48 systems, ships began to emerge. Strange ships. Beautiful ships. Ships that moved like nothing the council had ever seen. Hyun's message began broadcasting on every council frequency. Chancellor Vexrin watched it with growing horror. Hierarch Talmora sat frozen. Her metallic wings spread wide in shock. "What have we done?" Talmora whispered. They were about to find out. Part 4. The collapse. The council chambers had never been so loud. 847 species, all shouting at once, created a noise that hurt to hear. Alarms blared. Screens showed 48 different star systems where barriers had just fallen. And in the center of it all, Chancellor Vexrin stood trying to restore order. "Silence," he roared, and his voice carried through the chaos. "We need to act, not panic." Hierarch Talmora spread her metallic wings. She was ancient, but her voice was strong. "Call the enforcement fleet. All ships, every single one. I want 10,000 vessels mobilized within the hour." "To do what?" asked a representative from the Zelvan species, a proud warrior race. Attack 48 systems at once? We do not have enough ships for that. Then we choose the most dangerous one, Vexrin said coldly. We go to Earth. We make an example of the humans. The rest will surrender when they see what happens to those who defy the Council. The vote was swift. 700 species agreed. 147 abstained or voted no. But the majority ruled. The Council's enforcement fleet, the largest military force in the known galaxy, began moving toward Earth. Fleet Commander Vorthok led the armada. He was Vrekan, like Hierarch Talmora, and he had spent 300 years commanding Council forces. He had never lost a battle. 10,000 ships followed his flagship, representing the military might of hundreds of species. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. We will arrive at Earth in 6 days, Vorthok told his officers. When we get there, we will demand their surrender. If they refuse, we will disable their vessels and force them back into quarantine. Minimal casualties. We are not monsters. But we will not allow rebellion to spread. The journey to Earth took 6 days. During that time, the galaxy watched. Every species with long-range sensors pointed them at Sol system. News networks broadcast constant updates. Some species cheered for the Council. Others quietly hoped humanity would win. But everyone watched. General Sora waited for them with 200 ships. Just 200 against 10,000. The numbers made no sense. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking at the tactical display, and smiled. Are our people ready? She asked her second in command, a man named Taeyang, who had spent his entire adult life preparing for this moment. All ships report ready. Taeyang confirmed. The Vryn are in position. The Korath are standing by. The Sylvani have the calculations loaded. We are as ready as we will ever be. Good, Sora said. Remember, we are not here to kill anyone. We are here to prove a point. That point is simple. They cannot catch us, they cannot hurt us, and they cannot make us go back in our cage. The Council fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system in a massive formation. 10,000 ships arranged in perfect military order. It was meant to be intimidating, and it was. Any sane species would have run or surrendered. Humanity did neither. General Sora broadcast a message to the entire fleet. Commander Vorthok, of the Council. My name is Sora, General of the United Earth Defense Force. We have no desire to fight you. Turn your ships around and return to the Council. Tell them, we are free, and we will remain free. Vorthok responded immediately. General Sora, you are in violation of Council quarantine law. Power down your vessels and prepare to be escorted back to your system. This is your only warning. No, Sora said simply. We are done taking orders from people who imprisoned us for existing. If you want to force us back into that cage, you will have to try. But I warn you, we are not the same species you quarantined 50 years ago. We have learned things, built things, become things. You will not like what happens if you attack. Vorthok considered his options. He had 10,000 ships. They had 200. This should be simple. All ships, he commanded. The Council fleet surged forward like a tidal wave of metal and fire. 10,000 ships, moving in perfect formation. Their weapons charging. Their crews confident in their overwhelming advantage. And then, humanity danced. The 200 human ships, along with vessels from the Vryn and Korath and others, began moving in patterns that should not be possible. They accelerated faster than anything the Council had seen. They turned at angles that would tear normal ships apart. They dodged between Council vessels, like water flowing through rocks. The barrier energy drives did not fight physics. They rewrote it. Just a little. Just enough. The ships moved in ways that made no sense to Council sensors. They were here. Then they were there. and nobody could track how they got from one place to another. Commander Taeyang piloted one of the lead ships. He had spent 30 years in simulation learning these maneuvers. Now, he put that training to use. His ship wove between 3 Council cruisers, never firing a shot, just proving that they could not touch him. This is what 50 years of isolation teaches you, he broadcast to the Council fleet. This is what happens when you lock engineers in a room with unlimited power and tell them to solve impossible problems. We solved them. All of them. Vorthok watched his tactical display with growing horror. His ships were firing, but they could not hit anything. The humans were too fast, too unpredictable. Worse, they were not fighting back. They were just dodging, making fools of the Council's greatest military force. Increase firepower, Vorthok ordered. I do not care if they are fast. Fill the space with so much fire that they cannot avoid it. The Council fleet opened up with everything they had. Energy beams. Missiles. Kinetic weapons. The space around Earth lit up like a star going nova. Surely nothing could survive that. But the human ships kept dancing. Not a single one was hit. They moved through the firestorm like ghosts. Untouchable. Unstoppable. And all the while, they did not fire back. The galaxy watched this display in stunned silence. The Council's most powerful fleet could not touch 200 ships. Could not even come close. The implications were staggering. Then General Sora made a mistake. Or perhaps it was not a mistake. Perhaps it was a calculated risk. She ordered her fleet to approach Mars, where civilian ships were transporting supplies to the colonies. Vorthok saw his opportunity. If he could not hit the military ships, perhaps he could force a surrender by threatening civilians. Target those transport vessels, he ordered. It was a desperate move. A dishonorable move. But Vorthok was panicking. The impossible was happening, and he needed to regain control. 3 Council ships broke formation and fired on a civilian transport. The ship exploded, killing 3,000 humans in an instant. Men, women, children, gone in a flash of fire. For a moment, everything stopped. The human military ships froze in place. The Council fleet waited to see if they would surrender. Instead, something else happened. Something the Council was not prepared for. General Sora did not order an attack. She ordered something far worse. Release everything, she said quietly. Every communication we have intercepted over the past 50 years. Every secret. Every lie. Everything. Taeyang pressed a button, and files began broadcasting to every corner of the galaxy. 50 years of Council communications, collected through the quantum network that connected the quarantine barriers. Conversations the Council thought were private. Decisions they thought were secret. The galaxy learned the truth. The quarantine program was not about safety. It was about control. Any species that became too advanced, too creative, too independent, was labeled dangerous and imprisoned. The Council had been doing this for thousands of years, eliminating potential rivals before they could become threats. There were records of debates where Council members laughed about the imprisoned species. Records of votes where peaceful species were quarantined simply for questioning Council authority. Records showing that the Council knew, absolutely knew, that most quarantined species were harmless. They just did not care. The effect was instant. Across the galaxy, species that had supported the Council began to waver. The Zelvan, warriors who valued honor above all, were horrified. 300 species started broadcasting messages of condemnation. The Council had lied to them for millennia. In the Council chambers, chaos erupted again. This time, Vexrin could not restore order. Representatives were shouting accusations at each other. Some species were demanding answers, others were demanding justice. And some were quietly beginning to wonder if they should remain in the Council at all. Vorthok received new orders. Return immediately. Do not engage. The situation had become political, not military. But as his fleet turned to leave, General Sora broadcast one more message. You killed 3,000 of our people. We will not forget. But we will also not seek revenge. We want something else. We want change. And change is coming, whether you like it or not. Part 5. Reckoning. The galaxy was falling apart, and the Council could only watch. Within 3 days of the information release, 200 species formally condemned the quarantine program. Within a week, 50 species announced they were suspending their council membership pending an investigation. Within a month, 400 species had either left or demanded major reforms. Chancellor Vexrin stood in the nearly empty council chambers, where once 847 species had gathered. Now fewer than 400 remained, and even those looked ready to leave at any moment. We can survive this, Vexrin said to Hierarch Talmora. They were alone in a side room, watching their empire crumble. We just need time. People will forget. Things will return to normal. Talmora spread her metallic wings sadly. No, old friend. Things will never be normal again. The humans have shown the galaxy what we truly are. Controllers, manipulators, everything we claim to stand against. Then what do we do? Vexrin asked. We accept that our time is over, Talmora said. And we pray that what comes next is better than what we built. Meanwhile, humanity was building exactly that. Ambassador Nari, daughter of the astrophysicist who first discovered the quantum network, stood before a gathering of 500 species. This was not the council chambers. This was a new place, orbiting a neutral star, where any species that wanted change could come and speak freely. We call ourselves the Exodus Coalition, Nari announced to the gathered representatives. We are 48 species who were imprisoned for being different, for being dangerous, for threatening the old order. We invite any species who wants to join us. The only requirements are honesty, cooperation, and respect for diversity. A representative from the Zelvan species stood. How do we know you will not become what the council was? How do we know you will not abuse power once you have it? Nari smiled. We do not want power. We want partnership. The council ruled through fear. We propose something else. Mutual benefit. Every species brings something valuable. The Vryn bring empathy. The Korath bring engineering. The Sylvani bring logic. Humans bring stubbornness and a refusal to accept that anything is impossible. Together, we are stronger than any of us alone. And if species disagree? Asked a crystalline being from the Tilori. What happens then? Then we debate. We argue. We find compromise, Nari said. The council enforced unity. We embrace diversity. There will be conflict, yes. But conflict is how ideas improve. The council was terrified of conflict, so they imprisoned anyone who disagreed with them. We will not make that mistake. One by one, species began joining the Exodus Coalition. The Zelvan came first, bringing their warrior culture and strict honor codes. The Tilori joined next, fascinated by human art and music. More followed. Within 6 months, the Exodus Coalition had 600 member species. The old council was left with fewer than 200, and most of those were too afraid to leave or too proud to admit they were wrong. But some council species refused to accept the new order. They still believed humanity was dangerous, that the old ways were better. Tensions grew. Small conflicts broke out on border worlds. Some council loyalists tried to reinstate barriers around freed species. The coalition responded not with force, but with words, sending diplomats instead of soldiers. General Sora, now retired from active duty, became an instructor. She taught coalition peacekeepers a simple lesson. Power is meaningless if you have to use it. True strength is making others not want to fight you in the first place. We could destroy the remaining council species if we wanted. But what would that prove? That we are exactly as dangerous as they feared? Better to show restraint. Better to show that we are not threats, just people who want to be free. Meanwhile, Dr. Junho's great-granddaughter, a physicist named Sujin, led a team studying the species that remained loyal to the old council. Not to fight them, not to punish them, but to understand them. What made them so afraid of change? What traumas did they carry? How could the coalition help them feel safe enough to join? Many of them are prey species, Sujin explained to a coalition meeting. They evolved being hunted, being afraid, being cautious. The council gave them safety through rigid control. We are asking them to embrace uncertainty, and that terrifies them. We need to show them that diversity does not mean danger. The coalition created programs to help. Cultural exchanges, joint research projects, gradual integration. Instead of demanding immediate commitment, slowly, carefully. They showed the afraid species that change did not have to be catastrophic. 10 years after the barriers fell, Hierarch Talmora requested a private meeting with Ambassador Hyun. The old human was now over 100 years old, kept alive by medical advances that came from coalition research. He moved slowly, supported by a cane, but his mind was still sharp. They met in a garden on Earth, in the city of Pyongyang. It was autumn, and the leaves were turning gold and red. Talmora walked beside Hyun, her metallic wings folded respectfully. "I owe you an apology," Talmora said. "When you stood before the council all those years ago, I thought we were protecting the galaxy. I thought we were being wise. I was wrong." Hyun nodded slowly. "You were afraid. I understand fear. Everyone does. We ran predictive models," Talmora continued, "about what humanity would do if allowed into the galaxy. The models said you would either unite everyone or conquer everyone. Those were the only two outcomes. We chose what we thought was the safer path. We chose to lock you away." "Your models were right," Hyun said with a slight smile. "We did unite the galaxy, just not in the way you expected. You were afraid of our violence. You should have been afraid of our hope." Hope is dangerous," Talmora said. "It makes people think things can change. That they should change." "Yes," Hyun agreed. "And that is exactly what the galaxy needed. You built a system based on fear and control. It lasted thousands of years, but it was always going to fall eventually. We just sped up the process." They walked in silence for a while, watching the leaves fall. Finally, Talmora asked the question that had haunted her for a decade. "Do you hate us? For what we did?" Hyun stopped walking and looked at her with ancient, tired eyes. "Hate you? No. I pity you. You lived for thousands of years and learned nothing. We lived for 50 years in a prison and learned everything. Which of us do you think made better use of our time?" "I Mada." "Runtin." Talmora had no answer. The old council officially dissolved 5 years later. The remaining species either joined the Exodus Coalition or formed smaller regional governments. The age of centralized galactic control was over. In its place came something messy, complicated, and beautiful. True cooperation between equals. In Geneva, on Earth, humanity erected a monument to the quarantine. It was a simple thing. A section of the barrier, preserved and mounted in a public square. Philosopher Do-yun, now very old but still writing, composed the inscription. "They tried to cage us. Instead, they freed us. May we remember both the prison and the key were always ours to shape." Tourists from 600 species came to see it. They took pictures. They touched the barrier fragment. They asked human guides to explain what it had been like. Living in isolation. The guides always said the same thing. It was hard. It was lonely. But it taught us that barriers are only as strong as our belief in them. And we stopped believing. B. The galaxy learned what the Council never understood. Humanity's greatest threat was never their capacity for violence. It was never their technology, or their tactics, or their stubbornness. It was something simpler and more powerful. Their absolute refusal to accept that any wall was permanent, that any prison was escape-proof, that any situation was hopeless. In trying to contain Earth, the Council taught humanity the most dangerous lesson possible. They taught them that isolation breeds innovation, that unity breeds strength, that those who fear change will always be consumed by it. General Sora, now 90 years old, gave an interview on the 50th anniversary of the barrier falling. A young reporter asked her what humanity's greatest achievement was. She thought for a long moment. "We could have become what the Council feared," she finally said. "When we broke free, we had the power to destroy them, to punish them, to make them suffer, as we had suffered. But we chose differently. We chose to build instead of destroy, to teach instead of conquer, to hope instead of hate. That is what makes us human. Not our violence, not our intelligence, our choice to be better than we have to be." The galaxy was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still disagreements, still problems to solve. But it was better than it had been. More free, more honest, more alive. And in a small apartment in Seoul, Dr. Sujin worked late into the night on a new project. She was studying the quantum signatures of reality itself, looking for patterns, looking for answers to bigger questions. Looking, always looking, because that was what humans did. They never stopped asking, what if? They never stopped dreaming of what could be. The Council had tried to stop that. They had failed, and the galaxy was better for it.